The gentle hum of laboratory equipment filled the air as Dr. May worked late into the night, her eyes fixed on the neural interface readings scrolling across her holographic display. She hadn't planned on becoming anything more than a brilliant researcher, someone who would help push the boundaries of human achievement from behind the scenes. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. "Doctor, we need to run the compatibility test again," her assistant called from across the lab. "These readings, they're unlike anything we've seen before." May rubbed her tired eyes and nodded. It was her 15th neural compatibility test this week, a routine procedure they'd been running on hundreds of candidates. Each test helped them understand how different human brains might interface with their revolutionary new warship design. But this time was different. This time, the results made her hands tremble. "Run it again," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "and triple-check the calibration." The massive screen surrounding her workstation lit up with cascading data streams. Neural patterns danced across the display, forming intricate patterns that she'd spent years learning to interpret. Every scientist in the program knew what they were looking for, that perfect harmony between human consciousness and machine intelligence that would make their dream of a neural-class battleship possible. What nobody expected was to find that perfect match in one of their own researchers. "Ma'am," her assistant's voice cracked with excitement, "the numbers, they're even stronger this time. Your neural pattern shows 99.8% compatibility with the prototype systems. The next highest candidate barely reached 82%. May sat down heavily in her chair, the weight of realization pressing down on her shoulders. She had designed these tests, written the algorithms that measured neural compatibility. She knew exactly what these numbers meant. The project director arrived within minutes of being notified, his usual composed demeanor slightly ruffled. "Dr. May," he said, looking at her with a mixture of concern and barely contained excitement, "I assume you understand what this means." She nodded slowly, her mind racing through all the implications. Years of researching neural interfaces had taught her exactly what it meant to achieve such perfect compatibility scores. The prototype battleship they'd been building, humanity's most ambitious military project, wouldn't just need a pilot. It would need someone whose mind could completely merge with its systems, becoming one with the vessel itself. "We need to run more tests," she said quietly, but she already knew what they would show. Her neural patterns matched the ship's requirements so perfectly that it almost seemed like destiny, though as a scientist she didn't believe in such things. Over the next few days, news of her compatibility spread through the facility like wildfire. Colleagues she'd worked with for years now looked at her differently. She wasn't just Dr. Mai the researcher anymore. She was about to become something humanity had never seen before. Late one evening, as she stood in the observation deck, looking out at the massive ship being constructed in the orbital facility, her old mentor joined her. The prototype's hull gleamed under the construction lights, its sleek form unlike any warship ever built. "You don't have to do this," he said gently. "We can keep searching for other candidates." May placed her hand against the reinforced window, measuring the ship's bulk against her palm. "We both know there isn't time for that," she replied. "The deep space sensors have been picking up something strange at the edge of our solar system. Whatever's out there, it's getting closer. We need this ship operational, and we need it soon." She turned to face her mentor, determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. "I've spent my whole career trying to understand how human consciousness could interface with machines. I never thought I'd be the one to actually do it, but maybe that's exactly why it has to be me. I understand the risks, the challenges, and I'm ready." The old scientist nodded slowly, pride and worry mixing in his eyes. "Then I suppose we should get started with the integration protocols. You know better than anyone what comes next." As they walked back to the laboratory together, May felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. Tomorrow, she would begin the process that would change her life, and possibly the fate of humanity forever. But for now, she was still just a scientist, doing what she'd always done, pushing the boundaries of what humans thought possible. Little did she know that her transformation would soon make an entire alien civilization question everything they believed about human evolution. The medical bay hummed with activity as Dr. May lay in the specialized integration pod, her heart racing despite her outward calm. The room temperature was kept precisely at 20 degrees Celsius, but she still felt a chill run down her spine. This was the moment everything would change. "Your vital signs are stable," the chief medical officer said, checking the countless monitors surrounding the pod. "Remember, you'll be conscious through most of the integration process. We need your mind active to form the neural pathways correctly." May took a deep breath, inhaling the slightly metallic smell of the medical bay. "I understand. I helped design this procedure after all." She managed a small smile, trying to hide her nervousness from the medical team. They had enough pressure on them already. The integration pod looked deceptively simple, a sleek white chamber filled with neural interface gel that would keep her body stable during the 3-month process. But May knew better than anyone the complexity of what was about to happen. Her consciousness would gradually expand beyond her physical form, reaching out through carefully crafted pathways to merge with the massive battleship waiting in orbit. Beginning neural sync in 3, 2, 1. The first connection felt like a gentle wave washing over her mind. New sensations began trickling in, supple at first, then growing stronger. She could feel the ship's systems at the edge of her awareness, like limbs she never knew she had. "How are you feeling?" Her mentor's voice came through the comm system. "It's different," she replied, struggling to find the right words. "I can sense the ship, but it's distant, like trying to remember a dream." Days turned into weeks, and the connection grew stronger. Mai learned to process the strange new inputs her expanded consciousness was receiving. The ship's external senses became extensions of her senses. She began to feel the gentle vibration of its fusion reactors as if they were her own heartbeat. Sometimes, during the quiet night cycles when most of the medical team was resting, she would focus on exploring her new awareness. She discovered she could feel the temperature differences across the ship's hull, sense the minute adjustments of the stabilization thrusters, and even detect the subtle electromagnetic fields surrounding the vessel. The transformation wasn't always smooth. There were moments of disorientation when her mind struggled to process both her human body sensations and the ship's vast array of inputs. The medical team watched anxiously during these episodes, but May pushed through each challenge with determination. "Your neural integration is at 45%, the project director announced at the end of the first month. "You're progressing faster than our most optimistic projections." May could only nod in response. Words felt increasingly inadequate to describe what she was experiencing. How could she explain that she was beginning to think in terms of radar sweeps and power fluctuations? That she could feel solar radiation against her hull skin? By the second month, she had learned to divide her attention between her physical body and her expanding ship self. The medical pod kept her human form healthy while her consciousness stretched and grew. The sensation was similar to waking up slowly, becoming aware of more and more of herself with each passing day. "Tell me about the changes," her mentor asked during one of their regular check-ins. "It's like growing up again," she explained, her voice soft but clear through the pod's communication system. "Remember learning to walk as a child? How your brain had to figure out how to control your legs? It's like that, but I'm learning to control engines and weapon systems instead of muscles." The final month of integration brought the most dramatic changes. The boundary between her human consciousness and the ship's systems began to blur. She no longer needed to think consciously about operating the ship's functions. They had become as natural as breathing. Neural integration at 98%, the chief medical officer announced on the final day. "All systems are stable and responding normally." As the medical team prepared to end the integration process, May felt a profound sense of completion. She was no longer just Dr. May, and she wasn't simply a battleship either. She had become something entirely new, a fusion of human consciousness and advanced technology that would change the course of history. But even as she marveled at her transformation, a small part of her wondered, what would happen when she finally left Earth's orbit and ventured into the unknown? The strange signals from the edge of the solar system were growing stronger, and soon she would face whatever was out there, not as a mere observer, but as humanity's first line of defense. The real test of her transformation was yet to come. The first time Dr. Mai fired her engines at full power, the sensation was overwhelming. She felt the massive surge of energy course through what was now her body, the powerful fusion reactors humming with barely contained power. The stars stretched out before her senses, more vivid and beautiful than human eyes could ever perceive. All systems are functioning within normal parameters, she reported to Mission Control, her voice transmitted through the ship's communication arrays. It felt strange to still use her voice when she could now communicate in so many other ways, but it helped maintain her connection to her human roots. The testing grounds between Earth and Mars had become her training area. Here, she learned to interpret the thousands of sensor inputs that now flooded her consciousness every second. The cold of space pressed against her hull, while solar radiation danced across her energy shields in patterns of light that her human mind had never been capable of seeing before. "Let's try the basic maneuvering sequence," the flight director suggested. "Remember, take it slow." But slow had taken on a new meaning for her. Her thoughts moved at the speed of electricity now, racing through her neural networks faster than any human brain could process. A simple course correction that would have taken a normal ship's crew several minutes to calculate and execute, she could perform in microseconds. During one practice session, she detected a small meteoroid heading toward her position. Before the tracking station could even issue a warning, she had already calculated its trajectory, adjusted her shields, and moved to a safe distance. The entire sequence took less than a second. Incredible response time, her old mentor commented through the comm channel. How does it feel to process information that quickly? She considered the question carefully. It's like, remember how time seems to slow down during an emergency? That's how I experience everything now. I have time to think through every action, every possibility, even though it happens faster than I can explain it. The weapons testing proved even more remarkable. Her targeting systems weren't just tools anymore, they had become extensions of her will. In simulated combat scenarios, she could track hundreds of targets simultaneously, each one as clear in her awareness as her own fingers had once been to her human form. But it wasn't all about combat and maneuvering. There were quiet moments too, when she would drift in the silence of space, learning to be comfortable in her new existence. She discovered she could feel the subtle gravitational pulls of nearby planets, the gentle pressure of solar winds against her hull, and even detect the faint radiation from distant stars. "Your sensor readings are showing some unusual patterns," one of the engineers noted during a routine check. "Are you experiencing any difficulties?" "No," she replied, realizing she had been unconsciously adjusting her senses to create a more complete picture of her surroundings. "I'm just learning to see things differently. It's like having synesthesia. Everything connects in new ways." The most challenging aspect wasn't the technical operation of her systems, but learning to balance her human consciousness with her new capabilities. Sometimes she would catch herself thinking in terms of power distributions and sensor arrays, almost forgetting her human origins. That's when she would deliberately engage in conversations with the ground crew, using her voice instead of data bursts, reminding herself of who she used to be and still was in many ways. One evening, as Earth's blue sphere filled her forward sensors, a maintenance technician asked her a simple question: "Do you miss being human?" The question made her pause. "I haven't stopped being human," she finally answered. "I've just become more than I was. I still feel emotions, still care about people, still love watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. I just experience these things in a different way now." As her training progressed, she began to understand why the Neural Interface project had been so important. No artificial intelligence could match the intuition and adaptability of a human mind, and no traditional human pilot could process information quickly enough to fully utilize a modern battleship's capabilities. But she could do both, bridging the gap between human and machine in ways that were still revealing themselves. When the final day of basic training arrived, she felt ready. Her senses were constantly picking up strange signals from the outer solar system, growing stronger with each passing day. Whatever was out there, she knew she would face it not just as a weapon or a tool, but as something entirely new. A human consciousness evolved beyond its original limitations. The real question wasn't whether she could master her new form, but what she would discover about herself when she finally faced a real challenge. That answer lay waiting in the darkness beyond Mars, where unknown visitors were about to test everything she had become. The deep silence of the Kuiper Belt was broken only by the steady hum of her systems as Dr. Mai patrolled the outer edges of the solar system. Her senses swept the darkness in ever-widening arcs, searching for the source of the mysterious signals that had brought her out this far. "Control, I'm picking up something unusual," she transmitted back to Earth. The signal delay meant it would take hours for her message to reach home, but protocol demanded she maintain regular communication. "The energy signatures are like nothing in our database." She adjusted her sensors, focusing them on a particular point in space where the readings seemed strongest. At first, there was nothing visible even to her enhanced perception. Then she caught it, a subtle distortion in the starfield, as if space itself was bending. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. "They're using some kind of cloaking technology," she whispered to herself, though technically she didn't need to whisper anymore. Her tactical systems automatically began analyzing the distortion patterns, trying to determine the size and number of the hidden objects. That's when the first ship decloaked. It emerged from the void like a predator revealing itself, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The vessel was massive, easily twice her size, its design completely alien to any human conception of spacecraft. "Control, first contact scenario is now in effect," she transmitted, her message calm despite the gravity of the situation. "I am detecting one visible vessel, approximately 2 kilometers in length. Design unknown. Technology level significantly advanced." She initiated her first contact protocols, broadcasting greeting messages on all frequencies, including mathematical sequences designed to demonstrate intelligence and peaceful intentions. The alien vessel remained silent, but her sensors detected power fluctuations within its hull that suggested it was far from inactive. Then more ships appeared. 2, 5, 8 vessels materialized from the void, arranging themselves in a formation that her tactical systems immediately recognized as both defensive and potentially aggressive. Their design was identical to the first ship, suggesting they were part of the same fleet. "Control, situation update," she transmitted. 8 additional vessels have revealed themselves. They are maintaining formation at approximately 5,000 kilometers distance. No response to communication attempts. She kept her weapons systems powered down, not wanting to appear threatening, but maintained her shields at full strength. Years of scientific research and military planning had gone into preparing for this moment, humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. But all those plans seemed somehow inadequate in the face of the reality before her. The alien ships began to move, not toward Earth, as she had feared, but in a circular pattern around her position. Their movement was precise, almost mechanical, yet there was something about it that suggested intelligence rather than automated behavior. "I know you can understand me," she broadcast again, this time using a wider range of frequencies. "I represent humanity from the 3rd planet of this star system. We wish to establish peaceful contact." The response, when it came, wasn't in words or even recognizable signals. Instead, her sensors detected a massive surge of energy building within the alien fleet. Their formation tightened, and their mysterious hulls began to emit a pulsing glow that made her defensive systems scream warnings. "Control," she transmitted, knowing her message wouldn't reach Earth for hours. "The alien vessels are powering up what appear to be weapon systems. Their formation suggests hostile intent. I am engaging defensive protocols and preparing for possible conflict." Time seemed to slow down as she activated her combat systems. All her training, all the simulations, had prepared her for this moment. Yet nothing could have truly prepared her for the reality of facing an unknown alien force alone, billions of kilometers from home. The first energy burst from the alien fleet came without warning, a brilliant beam of something her senses couldn't quite categorize. She dodged it with reflexes that would have been impossible for any traditional ship, the movement more instinct than calculation. As she prepared for what was coming next, a strange thought crossed her mind. Perhaps this was why the neural integration project had been so urgent. Someone somewhere must have known that humanity would need more than just advanced technology to survive its first encounter with alien life. They would need a defender who could think and react with both human intuition and machine speed. As the alien fleet moved to surround her, Dr. May realized she was about to find out if she was truly ready for that role. The alien ships moved with incredible speed, but Dr. May's human instincts combined with her ship body's capabilities gave her an unexpected advantage. She could feel, not just calculate, where they would be next. As another energy beam sliced through the space she had occupied milliseconds before, she realized why the neural integration project had succeeded where pure eye had failed. Their attack patterns are too perfect, she transmitted to Earth, even as she spun through a series of evasive maneuvers that would have torn a normal crew apart. They're fighting like machines, not living beings, predictable in their perfection. 3 alien ships closed in from different angles, their weapons charging for what looked like a coordinated strike. Instead of retreating, she did something that seemed to confuse them. She deliberately flew slightly off balance, like someone stumbling mid-step. The aliens' perfect formation suddenly became a weakness as they adjusted their aim with mechanical precision to where she should have been, not where human intuition had taken her. They don't understand imperfection, she thought, as her senses registered their missed shots. They don't understand human unpredictability. Her own weapons systems came alive, not targeting the ships directly but instead firing in patterns that forced them to break their rigid formations. It was like a dance, but one where every step could mean survival or destruction. She moved in ways that defied standard space combat tactics, sometimes spinning when she should have accelerated, other times charging forward when retreat seemed logical. The alien vessel's responses became increasingly erratic. Their perfect coordination began to show cracks as they struggled to adapt to her seemingly illogical combat style. She wasn't fighting like a battleship, she was fighting like a human who happened to be a battleship. Their technology is superior, she noted in her battle log, but they can't predict what they don't understand. And they don't understand human intuition. An energy blast grazed her shields, and she felt the heat like a sunburn across her hull. In response, she executed a maneuver that looked like a stumble but was actually precisely calculated, letting her momentum carry her into a position that split the alien formation. "Why do you attack?" she broadcast again, genuinely curious even in the midst of combat. "We could learn from each other instead of fighting." The aliens responded with another coordinated attack, but she could sense something different now. Their movements suggested not just aggression but confusion. Every time they adapted to one of her irregular patterns, she changed it slightly, adding those small imperfections that made human movement unique. Her senses picked up increasing energy fluctuations from the alien ships. They were communicating with each other rapidly, probably trying to make sense of her combat style. That's when she had an insight. They weren't just confused by her tactics, they were disturbed by them. One of the alien ships ventured too close, probably attempting to scan her more thoroughly. She took advantage of the moment, using her point defense systems in a way they were never designed for, creating a pattern of light and energy that mirrored the complexity of human neural patterns. The effect was immediate. The nearby alien ship actually backed away, its energy emissions showing patterns that her intuition interpreted as shock. The others began to adjust their formation, but no longer in the aggressive pattern they had maintained before. "They're not just fighting me," she realized. "They're studying me, and something about what they're seeing doesn't fit their understanding of how things should work." She pressed this advantage, not with weapons but with movement. Each action she took combined the precision of her ship's systems with the beautiful irregularity of human thought. Her neural patterns, displayed through her energy emissions, showed them something they had apparently never encountered: technology guided not by rigid programming, but by the endless creativity of human consciousness. The alien ships maintained their distance now, their behavior shifting from aggressive to observational. She could sense their scanning beams trying to understand how her systems worked, how she could fight in ways that defied their tactical predictions. "I am not just a ship," she broadcast one final time. "I am human consciousness evolved. We are not bound by the limitations you might expect." As the standoff continued, Dr. May realized she had achieved something more significant than a military victory. She had shown these advanced aliens something that seemed to shake their very understanding of how species could evolve. The true power of the neural-class battleship wasn't in its weapons or technology, it was in the uniquely human way it could use them. The alien ships circled like wary predators, their earlier aggression replaced by cautious observation, but Dr. Mai could sense they were building up to something. Her sensors detected massive energy accumulation within their vessels, suggesting they were preparing for a coordinated attack that would dwarf their earlier efforts. 3 ships to port, 2 above, 3 below, she noted in her combat log. Time seemed to stretch as her human mind processed the situation through her ship's enhanced sensors. They're trying to cage me in. What happened next was pure instinct, the kind of reaction that came from being both human and machine. As the alien ships launched their attack, she felt something building within her neural networks. It wasn't like the calculated responses of her weapon systems or the programmed maneuvers in her combat database. This was different, more organic, like a sneeze building up or a muscle tensing before a jump. Energy surge detected in neural core. Her monitoring systems reported, but she was already aware of it. The sensation was similar to what she'd felt during the initial integration process months ago, but much more intense. The alien vessels fired simultaneously, their energy weapons creating a cage of deadly light around her. In that moment of crisis, instead of trying to dodge or return fire, she let the building sensation within her neural networks float outward. It was instinctive, like extending an arm to break a fall. What emerged was unlike anything in her combat protocols. A massive pulse of neural energy burst from her ship body, expanding outward in waves that carried patterns of her human consciousness. The pulse wasn't just electromagnetic, it somehow transmitted the complex patterns of her merged human-machine thoughts. The effect on the alien ships was immediate and dramatic. Their energy weapons flickered and died as the neural pulse washed over them. But more than that, she felt something she hadn't expected, a connection. For a brief moment, she could sense the aliens' own consciousness. Their minds were orderly, precise, engineered to perfection over countless generations. The chaos and creativity of her human thoughts flowing through machine systems seemed to overwhelm them. The neural pulse, it's not just disrupting their systems, she transmitted to Earth, her message tinged with awe. It's letting me connect with their minds. They're terrified. Through this unexpected mental link, she caught glimpses of their civilization, a society that had spent millennia pursuing genetic and technological perfection. They had engineered themselves to be logical, efficient, and predictable. The sight of human consciousness successfully merged with technology, still maintaining its beautiful chaos and creativity, violated everything they believed about evolution. The pulse lasted only seconds, but its impact was profound. As the connection faded, she could sense the alien ships struggling to recover. Their perfect formation had broken completely, their movements now showing signs of genuine disorder for the first time. I didn't just surprise them, she realized. I showed them something they thought was impossible. Consciousness that embraces both order and chaos, machine precision and human intuition. The aliens began to retreat, their movements suggesting not just tactical withdrawal, but something closer to genuine fear. Through the lingering traces of the neural connection, she could sense their confusion and disbelief. They had encountered something that didn't fit into their carefully ordered understanding of the universe. As her systems returned to normal, Dr. May tried to process what had just happened. The neural pulse hadn't been a weapon in the traditional sense. It was more like a broadcast of her very existence, a demonstration that consciousness could evolve in ways the aliens had never imagined. Control, she transmitted, knowing her message would take hours to reach Earth. I think I just discovered why the neural integration project was so important. We didn't just create a better way to control ships. We showed that human consciousness can evolve without losing what makes it human. The alien ships continued their retreat, but she could still feel echoes of their shocked reaction. They had come expecting to find primitive technology, perhaps even planning to eliminate a potential future threat. Instead, they had encountered something that challenged their fundamental beliefs about evolution and consciousness. The stars seemed brighter somehow as she watched them withdraw, her senses detecting their shift to faster-than-light travel. She had discovered a power she never knew she had, not in her weapons or technology, but in the very nature of what she had become. A bridge between human consciousness and machine capability. As the alien ships retreated into the darkness of space, Dr. May's mind was flooded with the images and sensations she had gathered during the brief neural connection. The experience left her with an understanding that seemed both incredible and somehow inevitable. I need to report this immediately, she thought, even though her transmission wouldn't reach Earth for hours. She began sorting through the flood of information, trying to put what she had learned into words that would make sense to her superiors back home. Control, priority transmission, she began. The beings we encountered call themselves the Collective. They've been traveling between stars for over 50,000 years, but their journey hasn't been just about exploration. They've been pursuing what they consider genetic perfection. Through her ship's sensors, she watched the last traces of the alien fleet disappear from normal space. The memories from the neural connection were still vivid. Countless generations of careful genetic engineering, each step calculated to remove what they saw as flaws in their species. They started with simple improvements. She continued her transmission. Disease resistance, extended lifespans, enhanced intelligence. But they didn't stop there. They began engineering their minds, trying to eliminate what they saw as inefficiencies, emotions, creativity, randomness. They wanted to become perfect thinking machines. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, the first human consciousness successfully merged with a machine, and she had just demonstrated that keeping those supposedly inefficient human traits was actually an advantage. Images from the connection flashed through her mind. Vast cities where every building was mathematically perfect, societies where every action was calculated for maximum efficiency, children engineered before birth to fit precise genetic templates. The Collective had achieved incredible technological advancement, but they had sacrificed something fundamental in the process. They thought they were climbing the evolutionary ladder, she transmitted. Every generation more perfect than the last, more logical, more predictable. They looked down on species like us, seeing our chaos and emotion as primitive traits to be eliminated. She paused, letting her senses sweep the space where the alien ships had been, making sure they weren't planning a surprise return. But when they encountered me, it shattered their worldview. They couldn't understand how a consciousness could be successfully merged with technology while maintaining its chaotic, creative human nature. It went against everything they believed about evolution. The neural pulse had shown them more than just her thoughts. It had shown them a different path of evolution, one they had never considered possible. Their perfectly ordered minds had recoiled from the beautiful chaos of human consciousness operating through advanced technology. They're afraid now, she continued, not just of our technology, but of what we represent. They've spent millennia trying to eliminate everything that makes us human, only to discover that those very traits might be the key to a kind of evolution they never imagined. The vastness of space seemed different to her now. Through her enhanced senses, she could detect the faint traces left by the alien fleet's departure. They had come as conquerors, confident in their superiority, but had retreated in confusion and fear. The neural integration project succeeded because we didn't try to eliminate human nature from the equation. We found a way to merge human consciousness with technology while preserving everything that makes us human, our creativity, our emotions, our ability to make intuitive leaps that defy pure logic. As she prepared to return to Earth, she felt a profound sense of revelation. The Collective had spent 50,000 years trying to become perfect machines, only to be shocked by a human consciousness that had found harmony with machine existence without sacrificing its humanity. They'll be watching us now, she added to her transmission, not just as potential rivals, but as something that challenges their understanding of evolution itself. Every neural integrated ship we create, every human consciousness that successfully merges with technology while maintaining its human nature, proves that their path isn't the only way forward. The stars stretched out before her as she began her journey home, each one possibly hiding worlds where other species were making their own choices about evolution and technology. Humanity had unknowingly answered one of the greatest questions in the galaxy, not through careful planning or genetic engineering, but through their natural ability to adapt while remaining true to their nature. The vastness of space lit up with unusual energy patterns as the alien fleet prepared for their final retreat. Dr. Mai watched through her enhanced senses, recording every detail of their departure. But before they vanished completely, she received one last transmission, not in words or conventional signals, but in pure thought patterns she could now understand. "We do not comprehend you," the message seemed to say in her mind. Your existence defies our understanding of evolution. You must be contained. She felt their fear and confusion rippling through the transmission. These beings, who had spent thousands of years perfecting themselves, couldn't accept that a supposedly primitive species had found a different path to advancement. Your kind brings chaos to order, their message continued. You merge with machines yet retain your unpredictability. This cannot be allowed to spread. Through her sensors, she detected massive energy disturbances as the alien ships activated what appeared to be their long-range communication systems. They were sending warnings to their home civilization, she realized. Warnings about Earth and what they had discovered here. They're not just retreating, she transmitted to Earth. They're establishing a quarantine. They plan to isolate our entire solar system rather than risk contact with what we represent. The aliens' final message carried images of their response plan. They would set up automated warning beacons throughout nearby space, marking Earth's solar system as a restricted zone. Their ships would patrol the outer edges of nearby star systems, making sure humanity remained contained within its cosmic neighborhood. Your evolution threatens everything we have built, their message concluded. You will remain in your solar system. Any attempt to expand beyond these boundaries will be met with force. Dr. Mai processed this ultimatum through both her human consciousness and her ship's analytical systems. The aliens weren't just afraid of humanity's technology, they were terrified of the idea itself, of consciousness that could successfully merge with machines while maintaining its chaotic, creative nature. You fear what you don't understand, she broadcast back to them, knowing they would receive her message. But isolation won't stop evolution, it never has. She watched as the alien ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, their retreat marked by ripples in the fabric of space itself. Their fear was so profound that they preferred to quarantine an entire civilization rather than try to understand it. The silence that followed their departure felt heavy with meaning. She ran detailed scans of the surrounding space, watching as the aliens began deploying their warning beacons at the edge of the solar system. Each beacon pulsed with energy patterns designed to warn other alien ships away from Earth. Control, she transmitted, the immediate threat has passed, but we've gained something more valuable than a military victory. We now know we're not alone in the universe, and more importantly, we know our path forward is unique. The stars seemed to shine differently now, each one a reminder of the boundaries the collective had tried to place around humanity. But as she began her journey back to Earth, she felt not despair but a strange sort of hope. They think they can contain us, she noted in her log, but they don't understand what they're trying to contain. Human consciousness has never respected artificial boundaries. We've always found ways to grow, to adapt, to evolve while remaining true to ourselves. As she approached the orbit of Neptune, she detected the first of the alien warning beacons activating. Their pulses created a visible boundary in her sensor readings, like a fence built of light and energy around the solar system. The barrier wasn't just physical. It represented the collective's attempt to quarantine an idea they couldn't control. They hoped to contain humanity's unique form of evolution, to prevent it from challenging their carefully ordered understanding of the universe. As she watched the beacons pulse their warnings into space, Dr. May understood something the collective had missed. By trying to isolate humanity, they had actually given Earth time to develop more neural-class ships, time to better understand their own path of evolution, time to prepare for the day when the quarantine would inevitably end. Because if her brief connection with the alien minds had taught her anything, it was that no barrier, no matter how advanced, could permanently contain the human drive to explore and evolve. 6 months after the encounter with the collective, Dr. May hovered in Earth orbit, watching as the next generation of neural-class ships underwent their final testing. Each vessel carried a carefully selected human consciousness, chosen not just for their technical skills, but for their ability to maintain their humanity even after merging with their ships. Remember, she transmitted to the newest neural pilot during their training session, the power isn't in the technology, it's in staying human while using it. The young pilot's ship moved with slight uncertainty, still adjusting to their new existence. It reminded her of her own early days, learning to balance human thought with machine capability. But how do you handle all the sensor input? They asked. There's so much information. Don't try to process it like a computer would, she explained. Let it flow naturally, like learning to walk or ride a bike. Your human intuition knows how to adapt. Trust it. Earth's response to the alien quarantine had been surprisingly positive. Instead of fear or anger, humanity had embraced the challenge. Research facilities around the world had accelerated their neural integration programs, using the knowledge gained from the encounter to improve the technology. From her orbit, she could see the changes happening on the planet below. New shipyards stretched across the Pacific, their structures gleaming in the sunlight as they worked to build more Neural-class vessels. But these weren't just warships anymore. They were building exploration vessels, research ships, even cargo haulers that could be guided by integrated human consciousness. "Your neural patterns are stabilizing nicely," she told her student, watching as they executed a complex maneuver with growing confidence. "You're not fighting the integration anymore. You're flowing with it." The alien warning beacons still pulsed at the edge of the solar system, but they no longer seemed like prison walls. Instead, they had become a challenge, a reminder that humanity had time to develop at its own pace, to perfect their unique form of evolution before venturing out to face the galaxy again. During quiet moments between training sessions, she would extend her senses toward distant stars, wondering what other civilizations might be out there. Not all of them could be like the collective, she thought. Some might understand what humanity had discovered, that evolution didn't have to mean losing what made you unique. Each of you, she told her growing group of students, represents something the collective couldn't understand. We're not trying to become perfect machines. We're showing the universe that consciousness can evolve without sacrificing its essential nature. The neural integration process had been refined since her pioneering experience. New pilots adapted more quickly now, and the merge between human and ship had become smoother. But the core principle remained the same: preserve the human element, the beautiful chaos of creative thought that had so terrified the aliens. "Look," she transmitted to her students one day, directing their attention to a distant point of light. "That's where we encountered the collective. They thought they could contain us here, limit our evolution to what they could understand. But they didn't realize what they were dealing with." Her senses picked up the steady rhythm of work from the lunar surface, where engineers were developing new technologies based on insights gained from the alien encounter. They weren't trying to copy the collective's perfect but rigid designs. Instead, they were creating systems that could work in harmony with human unpredictability. "We're not just building a fleet," she explained to her students. "We're proving that there's more than one path to the future. The collective spent 50,000 years trying to eliminate their humanity. We're spending our time learning how to take our humanity with us into the stars." As she watched her students practice their maneuvers against the backdrop of Earth, she felt a deep sense of purpose. The first Neural-class battleship hadn't just defended humanity from alien aggression, it had shown the galaxy a new possibility, a different way of looking at evolution and consciousness. One day, she told her students as they completed their training, those warning beacons will come down. And when that day comes, we'll be ready. Not as perfect machines, but as humans who have learned to carry their consciousness into new forms while keeping their souls intact. The stars seemed to shine brighter as she contemplated this future, each point of light a reminder that the universe was vast enough for many kinds of evolution. Humanity had found its own path forward, one that embraced both technology and human nature. And when they finally ventured beyond their solar system again, they would carry this lesson with them to the stars.